Why is it that I, a pastor, have been so compelled to involve myself, commenting, giving opinion, posting all over the place about Kyle Rittenhouse and the trial in Kenosha, Wisconsin? I have no personal stake in this case. I'm not from Wisconsin. I'm not from the area. I don't know anyone who is. It's not because of political tribalism. I know people want to draw lines and they say, oh, well, Republican, Democrat, Trump and woke and all this kind of whatever. It's not about that. This wasn't even a political case. This was a simple case of self-defense or not. Who was the aggressor? Who was the one doing the attack? That is the issue that the trial had to suss out in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. So why did I get so wrapped up in the story of a young man that I don't know in a town that I'm not associated with regarding events that I wasn't involved in that had nothing to do with me? Well, because of the cultural situation and somewhat the political situation, this story got launched to the forefront of attention. If it had been any other year besides 2020, this probably would have been a local story that was on the local news, maybe a blurb about it, on a regional or national, but it wouldn't have been the big story it was. But because it became the big story, there were certain things that were getting said, that were getting inferred about this that I took notice of and was concerned about. And that had to do with principles. What are the core basic principles on which we are viewing and addressing the situation? It wasn't specifically about Kyle, but this was a good test case to show what principles were at play. The lines that were culturally drawn around the Kyle Rittenhouse trial had a very stark difference in the principles the assumptions that people were bringing based on their positions. And it's exactly because I'm a pastor that on that level I was concerned about what I was seeing surrounding this case and the things that people were saying and the things that were being expressed about it. As a follower in Christ, there are certain core principles that are very important that I believe are vital to having a decent functioning society. And I saw these were the principles at play, but they were also the things that a lot of people were casting aside. Namely, and we could probably talk about all sorts of other things, but the ones that primarily concerned me were the principles of truth, of personal responsibility, of justice, and of the idea of helping one another. So I'm just going to touch on these and explain what I saw and why I am so concerned in this that I felt I needed to post. Need to understand that I try to stay in my lane. I'm a preacher. I'm a Bible and theology guy. But I noticed that over the last couple of weeks, I was heavily posting and commenting on social media multiple times a day. I followed the trial. I listened to most of it live as it happened. And why would I engross myself in that? Well, it's because I think these are such important issues. The first one being truth. Right? Truth is that which corresponds to reality, right? It's just the way things simply are. Truth is not a narrative. It's not some personal experience. It's not a subjective feeling. There's not a your truth, my truth. That's a very nonsensical idea. Truth just is what it is. Right? Hey, I have a roll of duct tape. Is this duct tape black? It either is or it is not. There is no experience or feeling that's going to tell you whether or not it's black. It just is, and you either accept it or you don't. And we should be people who seek to live our lives in accordance with the truth and the way things really are, despite how we think or feel about them. In John 16:13, referring to the Holy Spirit, the third person of the triune Godhead, Jesus refers to the Spirit of truth See, truth is actually kind of a part of the nature of God. Truthfulness is an aspect of who God is, the God in whose image we are created, in whom we are to follow and seek to be like. In Proverbs 12:22, it says, "The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy." So we are to be truthful and trustworthy. In the Ten Commandments, the Big Ten, right? The kind of bedrock cornerstone morality of Western civilization. In Exodus 20, verse 16, it says, "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor." In 1 Corinthians 13, we're given this lesson in that love is like the highest thing that we should aim for, and it gives the characteristics of what it means to be loving. And it says in verse 6 that love rejoices in the truth. You cannot properly love someone if your actions and behavior and attitude towards them are based in lies. And as Christians, we are to be people who seek to know and live by the truth. And even for non-Christians, living according to truth is, it should be easy to see how life should be lived according to reality, right? That we should seek the truth about the situations we find ourselves in. However, from the very beginning, when it comes to the Kyle Rittenhouse case, the facts of the matter, the truth was getting twisted and distorted, and in some cases people were outright lying about the things that were going on. Even after having a long and meticulous court case where witness after witness and piece of evidence, where we had video, I don't know that there has ever been a case where so much video was available, but yet people were still saying blatantly false things. I saw it all over social media. You see it on the news where people are saying things that are just outright not true. And in many cases, they had no excuse for not being aware of the falsehood. People are forming their opinions and their views based on false information. And that shouldn't be it. We should actually seek the truth and form our views and opinions based on that. Just a few things that I even to this day, I'm seeing people saying on social media, and I'm seeing reported in the news. It was not illegal for Kyle Rittenhouse to carry and possess that firearm. It absolutely was not. He was legally able to have that in his possession and to carry it. The judge dismissed that charge because it doesn't apply. It wasn't illegal. It never should have been brought in the first place. The charge should never have been brought. Kyle Rittenhouse did not carry a gun across state lines. That gun was purchased in and lived in Kenosha at his friend's house. And that is where it stayed, and that is where he got it. That's a fact. So you keep hearing people talking about carried across state lines. It was across state lines. Brought a gun across state lines, which, by the way, it wouldn't have been illegal even if he had. He did not go to Kenosha for the purpose of protecting businesses. People say that this kid came from this other state there to play vigilante. No, Kenosha was his community. He was already there. He was there, I believe he worked earlier that day. If he wasn't at work, I know they had a job in Kenosha. His family lived in Kenosha. Not his mom, he lived with his mom about 20 miles away. His dad lived there, his grandma lived there, his sister lived there, aunts, uncles, cousins. I mean, he had family and ties and friends in Kenosha. It's just a fact that was his community. But he was already there that day. He didn't travel to Kenosha for the purpose of playing security guard. Kyle did not gun down protesters. Let's be crystal clear. The people who were on the streets of Kenosha were rioters. Drew Hernandez, who had hours and hours and hours of video from that night, he had been covering the civil unrest and things going on around the nation, and he testified on the stand. This was a riot. They were smashing cars and lighting fires, right? Those aren't peaceful protesters. The peaceful protesters were there earlier in the evening before the sun went down, and they had their signs and they had their voices heard. This was later at night when a riotous mob was burning and breaking things and vandalizing. That's what was going on, not peaceful protest. That is a fact. And so these are just facts. These are the things that if these are not incorporated into your view and your opinion, then you are not basing your opinion on the truth. Fact, every single person that Kyle Rittenhouse pulled the trigger on was in the process of attacking him. That there were no innocent bystanders that he just pointed at and shot. Every single person that he pointed his gun at and pulled the trigger was actively seeking to do him harm, potentially kill him. We even see several things in the video where people are nearby, and when he turns to them, they put their hands up and back up, and he doesn't shoot them. Even the guy, Gage Grosskreutz, I think is his name, who came at him with the gun, as he first approaches, Kyle turns to him and he puts his hands up. Kyle doesn't shoot him. It's only when he advances, pointing his gun, that Kyle shot him. This was all testified to in the court case by Gage Grosskreutz himself. And we have video evidence that in every single instance, the only people who got shot were those who were actively attempting to do harm to Kyle Rittenhouse. That is just a fact of the matter. Absolute fact. If you're not basing your view and opinion of this on that, you're not basing it on the truth. None of the people who were shot were black. People keep trying to make this about race. There were no black people involved. It was a white kid who shot 3 white people, and he wasn't there for racial issues. And I mean, and it's even arguable that some of the people involved, they weren't there for racial issues. It was just violence and riot. These are just a few of the things that I've seen people passionately posting and talking about and speaking out on, and their facts are just simply wrong. But we shouldn't be a people who do that. We should seek always to walk in the truth. So I've been sharing information. I've been posting things going, hey, here's actually the facts. Here's this testimony. Here's this evidence. I've been commenting on people's posts, and I mean, people get divisive. I went on a podcast, some atheist show where they were talking about it just because I felt so strongly that I want to represent that this is the fact of the matter. I want to give people good information so that they actually have that information available. Second thing is this idea of justice, that we need to seek justice. And a bedrock judicial principle in our nation, something that actually comes from the Bible, is that the people are considered to be innocent until proven guilty. Old Testament law lays this out, right? That you cannot find someone guilty unless you have at least 2 witnesses. Right? That there is a presumption of innocence, that the innocence of the accused is assumed unless and until it is proven that they are guilty. And that is a principle of justice which we have carried forward into our civilization because it is a fantastic idea. That we don't just go around accusing people and that then they get to be presumed guilty. No. If you're going to say that someone did something, you have a burden to prove that which you are accusing. But a lot of people seem to have made up their mind about Kyle Rittenhouse ahead of time. Before the trial had even begun, and during the trial, while his innocence was being proven, or attempted, his innocence was being proven. They were attempting to prove his guilt. Eventually it came out, this was straight up self-defense, not guilty on all counts. Every new witness that came up said, it was self-defense. Every piece of evidence that was shown pointed to self-defense. But yet, people were calling him murderer and calling for him to be put in prison for life or even give the death penalty. And they didn't even, the case was going on. They didn't even have the right information, but they're still saying, he's guilty, he's guilty, he's guilty. They'd already made up their minds about the guilt of this young man, rather than actually seeing the facts of the case. That is not justice. That is not what justice looks like. That is not the kind of society that we should want to live in, where the accused are presumed to be guilty and have to prove their innocence. Rather, a bedrock principle of justice is that you are presumed innocent and your guilt must be proven. And that needs to be applicable to all people, regardless of the situation. We do not jump to the conclusion of guilt. We presume innocence and let guilt be proven. Next is this idea of personal responsibility. It blows my mind how much I have seen this slide in our culture. One of the most alarming things that I saw happen is that people tried to blame Kyle being attacked on Kyle Rittenhouse himself. Right? They were claiming that his mere presence, the fact that he was even there, the fact that he was carrying a gun, which he is perfectly legal and within his right to do, that is what provoked the attacks. That's what caused these people to attack him. Rather than looking at the freely made choices of the men who attacked Kyle Rittenhouse as being just that, free choices by free agents who are responsible for their own choices, people want to shift the blame and the responsibility of those attacking him onto Kyle himself, as if he made them attack him. The prosecution even argued it this way, that those men who attacked him were provoked by him putting out their fires, how dare he put out fires, and by his going around armed, as if just holding a gun is somehow provocative. But that is not how it works. These people are responsible for their own choices. That is how life works. Would we argue this same way if we weren't talking about a young man at a protest, demonstration, riot about a contentious political issue? Something we all pretty much agree on is that victim blaming is wrong when it comes to sexual assault. What if this had been a young woman who had got assaulted? What if she had exercised poor judgment in where she went, who she was with, and what she was wearing, and ended up getting raped? Would we say, well, I mean, that was pretty provocative. She should have known that was a dangerous situation. She should have known she shouldn't dress like that. Oh, well, she should have known that she shouldn't have been around those people. And what could have happened? She was asking for it. And that should be repulsive and disgusting to every person listening to this. But that's exactly the way people are approaching Kyle Rittenhouse. Just as in a young woman getting assaulted, we would point at the man and go, it doesn't matter what she did. He is to blame for his choice to attack her. And it goes exactly the same for Kyle. Even if you want to believe that he shouldn't have been there, he shouldn't have been armed, it was a dangerous situation that he walked into, okay. But the men who chose to attack him are responsible for their own choices. They made that choice to attack him. He did not make them attack him. It's dangerous for us to slip into a cultural perspective that the people are not responsible for their own choices and their own actions. We're not pre-programmed robots. Okay, we're not just dominoes falling. We're not thoughtless organisms reacting to our circumstances. We actually have the ability to think. Right? In between stimulus and response, we have a third middle option where we get to consider our response. If we're making bad choices, we have the ability to fix them and make better choices. We choose every single day how we will act. And when we shift the blame for the responsibility, having the ability to respond, when we shift the blame and the responsibility to someone else, we are actually giving up our own power and our own ability to choose for ourselves. We shouldn't do that. People are responsible for the choices they make. And those men chose to attack Kyle. He didn't make them attack him. Even if you want to say, as the prosecution argued, he pointed his gun at Rosenbaum, when he began running away, he was not the aggressor. He wasn't provoking anything. He was fleeing to get away from a situation and was chased down and attacked. He didn't make Rosenbaum chase him down and attack him. He didn't make Anthony Huber hit him in the head with a skateboard. He didn't make Gage Grosskreutz point a gun in his face. Those men chose to do what they did. Just as we choose what we do, because that is how the world works and that is how we should view things. Personal responsibility. You own up to your actions and what you do. And the other side of that coin is because you are responsible, that empowers you to be better, do better, choose better, because you're in control of that. Why would we give that away to this nonsensical idea that it's other people that cause us to do things? Lastly, and I know this one might be a little controversial, the idea of helping others. We should be a people who want to help others. Right? That's one of the odd things I keep seeing people saying over and over again. Well, he shouldn't even have been there. He shouldn't even have been in Kenosha. He shouldn't have been on those streets. Well, think about why he was on those streets. He was there because someone asked him to help. One commenter I saw said that it was stupid and reckless to go there. Well, okay, you're welcome to your opinion, but the fact is, he was invited and he went to help. The reason Kyle was there in the first place was to help. A request came. He was sitting at his friend's house when the phone rang, and someone called his friend and said, hey, can you come help? And he asked Kyle, hey, do you want to go help? And Kyle said, yes, I will go help someone in my community who is asking me for help. Request came, so he went to help. And he took along his medical bag. No, he was not a certified EMT, but he did have rudimentary medical and first aid training. More than most people walking around have. And so he took his medical bag and figured, hey, while I'm there, I will help people. And that's what he was doing. I've heard people say, well, if he was there for that car lot, he should have just stayed on that property. As he was wandering the streets, he was looking for people who needed help. And he gave them help. Multiple people, whether they were bystanders or rioters, he helped. Whether it was a cut, a sprained ankle, there were several things that he helped people that night. Because that's what he was there to do, was to help and to give aid to those in need. This was his community. He worked there, he had friends there, he had family there. And so when his neighbors asked him for help, he helped. I mean, we can discuss the small choices that were made throughout the night. Should he have gone here? Should he have gone there? Should he have done this? Should he have done that? But what we should not do is disparage someone for their choice to answer the call of someone asking them for help. So that's it. That's why I had been so obsessively posting things about the Kyle Rittenhouse case, despite no attachment, no involvement, and that I'm a preacher. The Bible is my issue. But I just felt so compelled to it. This is why this case has engrossed my attention, why I felt I have needed to post and comment and offer thoughts, why I made a point to follow the trial as closely as I did, watching or listening to most of it live as it happened. Because as a civilized people, and especially as followers of Christ, we should be a people who value things like truth, like helping others, like justice and personal responsibility. That we recognize, good or bad, while it's a terrible burden that we bear the responsibility for our choices, they are our choices. And we should apply the responsibility where it lays. We should be a people who form our basis of what is going on based on truth and the facts of the matter. And we should seek justice. And I saw the exact opposite taking place in a culture and society getting wrapped up in doing things against the truth, against justice, against personal responsibility, against the idea that we should help our neighbors. It's tragic that people lost their lives. But let's not lose sight of the good things that we should cling to, that should undergird our view of each other, of situations, and of society. That's why I needed a comment. And I hope maybe I helped, at least in some small way.
We're unashamed to say